Sir, I'm detecting anomalous readings from the third planet, Lieutenant Carax announced, their crystalline form refracting the bridge's soft lighting. It appears to be Earth. High Commander Vectora's sensory tendrils coiled in irritation. Earth is a dead world, Lieutenant. The humans vanished 500,000 years ago. Run your diagnostics again. With respect, Commander, these readings are quite clear. There's an energy signature consistent with a Type 3 civilization's defense grid surrounding the entire system. And it's active. Vectora floated from their command pod, drifting across the bridge of the Stellar Seeker, to examine the readings personally. The commander's usually iridescent form clouded to a murky gray, the equivalent of a human's furrowed brow. Impossible, they muttered. The humans never progressed beyond primitive chemical propulsion. Their most advanced achievement was a crude habitat rotating around their moon. The bridge crew fell silent as a massive vessel materialized from quantum space less than a kilometer off their port bow. Its design was unlike anything in their database, an elegant fusion of organic curves and geometric precision that somehow hurt to look at directly. Running lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that seemed to follow mathematical principles that shouldn't exist. "This is Admiral Helena Zhang of the Earth Defense Force vessel, Ancestral Memory," a calm human voice announced over their comms. "You've entered restricted space. Please state your intentions." Vectora's form rippled with shock. Human. But your species disappeared? There was definite amusement in the Admiral's voice. Common misconception. We simply stepped sideways for a while. Step sideways? Into parallel space-time, yes. Turns out the multiverse is quite lovely this time of year. A pause. Well, every time of year, technically, since we exist simultaneously across multiple temporal streams now. Lieutenant Carax's crystalline structure vibrated with excitement. Your species achieved transdimensional evolution? How? Why? Would you believe it started with a trade dispute? Admiral Zhang's tone turned wry. The Mars colony was getting tired of paying premium rates for Earth exports. Someone suggested we find a way to bypass traditional shipping lanes. One thing led to another, and suddenly we'd accidentally invented quantum tunneling technology. You achieved faster-than-light travel because of shipping costs? Vectora's form clouded further. Oh no, that came later. The quantum tunneling was just the beginning. Once we figured out how to fold space-time, we started exploring parallel dimensions. Discovered some fascinating things about the nature of reality. Made some friends. Started a few interdimensional trade routes. You know how it goes. Vectora really didn't know how it went, but they nodded anyway. Of course, Zhang continued. We kept an eye on this dimension. Earth is still home, after all. The defense grid you detected is mainly to keep people from accidentally stumbling into any of our quantum anchors. Last thing we need is another incident like the Proxima Centauri picnic paradox of 47,093. The what? Long story involving a family barbecue, 3 parallel universes, and a very confused alien survey team. We're still finding temporal echoes of potato salad in that sector. Carax's crystalline form sparkled with barely contained questions. But why reveal yourselves now? Zhang's voice grew serious. We've been monitoring transdimensional disturbances in this sector. Something's stirring in the spaces between realities. Something old. We thought it best to make our presence known before things get interesting. Vectora's sensory tendrils coiled tighter. Define interesting. Let's just say, humanity didn't spend the last 500,000 years simply exploring. We've been preparing, building. There are things out there that make the void between galaxies look crowded, Commander. Things that remember when the universe was young, and aren't particularly happy about how it's turned out. The bridge fell silent again, but this time with a different quality. Less shock, more creeping dread. The defense grid isn't just to keep people out, Vectora realized. It's to keep something else in. Smart. I can see why they made you Commander. Zhang's voice carried approval. Humanity may have evolved beyond our original dimension, but we haven't forgotten our responsibilities. Earth isn't just our cradle. It's the front line of a war most species don't even know is coming. And you've been fighting it alone, for 500,000 years? A soft chuckle came over the comms. Who said we were alone? Those friends I mentioned? Turns out humans aren't the only species who figured out how to step sideways. We've got quite the coalition built up across the multiverse. Speaking of which, a series of smaller ships began emerging from quantum space around the Ancestral Memory. each one more impossible than the last. Some seemed to be made of crystallized time itself, others appeared to exist in multiple states simultaneously, and at least one looked suspiciously like a giant mechanical squid. "Allow me to introduce some of our allies," Zhang said. "The temporal architects of Dimension 7, the quantum collective of the parallel web, and Bob." "Bob?" Carax asked. "The squid ship. They chose the name themselves, said it had a nice ring to it. Who were we to argue?" Vectora's form had shifted to a pale blue, a sign of deep thought among their species. "You're recruiting." "Perceptive," Zhang replied. "We've been watching your civilization for some time. Your people's natural ability to manipulate crystalline structures could be invaluable in quantum engineering. Plus, you have a refreshing lack of existential crises when confronted with reality-bending phenomena." "That's because we've evolved past the need for consistent physical forms," Vectora said dryly. "Exactly! You'd fit right in. The benefits package is excellent, by the way. Full transdimensional healthcare, quantum retirement planning, and access to the inter-reality coffee shop network. Fair warning, though, the paperwork exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously." Carax vibrated with barely contained enthusiasm. "Commander, permission to—" Yes, Lieutenant. You can ask about their quantum engineering principles." Vectora's form shifted to a resigned purple. "I suppose we should notify Central Command that humanity hasn't actually gone extinct, but has instead ascended to a higher plane of existence and is recruiting for an interdimensional defense force?" "That would be helpful, yes, though you might want to leave out the part about Bob. They're still a bit sensitive about formal diplomatic recognition." The mechanical squid ship waved one of its tentacles in what might have been either a friendly greeting or a threat display. With quantum mechanics involved, it was probably both. "Welcome to the Coalition," Zhang said warmly. "Don't worry too much about the eldritch horrors from beyond space-time. You get used to them. The real challenge is navigating the interdimensional bureaucracy. Still haven't figured out how to file reports in nonlinear time without creating paradoxes." As their ship was gently tractor-beamed toward what appeared to be a quantum docking station that existed in at least 4 dimensions at once, Vectora couldn't help but reflect on the irony. Humanity hadn't disappeared because they were primitive. They'd disappeared because they'd become something far stranger than anyone could have imagined, and all because of shipping costs. "Oh, by the way," Zhang added casually, "we also solved faster-than-light travel. Turns out if you fold space-time enough times, it starts to develop creases you can slip through. Who knew?" Vectora decided some questions were better left unasked. They had a feeling humanity's answers would only lead to more questions, most of them involving increasingly improbable applications of quantum mechanics. And somewhere, in the spaces between spaces, ancient entities stirred in their ageless slumber, unaware that their greatest threat was a species that had achieved cosmic transcendence because they'd gotten tired of paying extra for Martian shipping. Remember when the strangest thing about humans was their obsession with efficient shipping? Vectora's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been nostalgia. It had been 3 standard months since their first contact with humanity's interdimensional fleet, and somehow things had only gotten weirder. Lieutenant Carax, now sporting quantum-enhanced crystalline matrices that allowed them to perceive 8 dimensions simultaneously, chimed in agreement. "That was approximately 2 existential crises ago, Commander. Or possibly next week, depending on which temporal stream you're following." They stood, or rather, existed in a state that could be loosely interpreted as standing, in the quantum observation deck of the ancestral memory, watching as reality itself twisted and buckled around them. The ship's quantum sensors had detected something massive stirring in the void between dimensions, and Admiral Zhang had called an emergency meeting of the Coalition. "Status report." Zhang's voice cut through the quantum static, her form flickering between various quantum states as she entered the deck. The Admiral had recently undergone what humans casually called quantum integration therapy, allowing her consciousness to exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. To Vectora's eyes, she appeared to be both completely human and something far more complex, like a mathematical equation given flesh. "The disturbance is growing," Carax reported, their crystalline structure displaying complex multi-dimensional calculations. "Whatever's trying to break through is bigger than anything we've encountered before." "Bigger than the Hydra cluster entity?" Bob's voice echoed through quantum space, their mechanical squid form phasing in and out of reality as they joined the conversation. "Bigger," Zhang confirmed grimly. "This is what we've been preparing for. The Ancient Ones are finally making their move." Vectora's form clouded. "I thought they were just a theory. A quantum nightmare from humanity's collective unconscious. Oh, if only, Zhang sighed. No, they're very real. They existed before the universe took its current form, and they're not particularly happy about how things turned out. Reality, as we know it, is too ordered for their taste. And they want to change that? Carax asked, their crystalline structure vibrating with concern. They want to unmake it, a new voice answered. A figure that appeared to be made of pure mathematics stepped onto the deck. Dr. Evangeline Chen, head of humanity's quantum archaeology division. We've finally decoded the patterns in the quantum foam. The ancient ones aren't just stirring, they're converging. All of them, at once. That's impossible, Bob protested. The quantum laws are being rewritten as we speak, Chen interrupted, her equation body shifting through impossible geometries. They're changing the fundamental constants of reality, starting with Earth's dimension. Zhang's quantum states aligned suddenly, her expression hardening. They're attacking our anchor point, clever bastards. She turned to Vectora. Commander, remember how we said humanity didn't just spend 500,000 years exploring? The preparations you mentioned. Vectora's form brightened with realization. Earth isn't just a front line, it's a trap. Got it in one. Zhang grinned, an expression that somehow existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Why do you think we left the original Earth seemingly abandoned? We've spent 500,000 years turning our entire solar system into the biggest quantum bomb ever conceived. Carax's crystalline structure nearly shattered from shock. You weaponized a solar system? Technically, we weaponized several thousand parallel versions of our solar system, Chen corrected. The math was a nightmare, but it turns out if you fold enough dimensions through themselves and detonate them simultaneously across multiple quantum states, you create a cascade effect that can rewrite the underlying structure of space-time itself. Bob finished, their mechanical tentacles wiggling with what might have been admiration. You beautiful, terrifying primates. We prefer creatively prepared, Zhang said dryly. But there's a catch. The detonation has to be precisely timed across all quantum states simultaneously. 1 microsecond off in any dimension, and instead of stopping the ancient ones, we'll just give them a bigger door to walk through. Vectora's form shifted to a deep purple, their species equivalent of rolling up sleeves. What do you need from us? Your people's crystal technology, Chen said. Combined with Bob's quantum mechanics and humanity's sheer bloody-minded determination, we might just have a chance. We need to build a quantum synchronization network across all participating dimensions. Think of it as the biggest game of multidimensional jump rope ever attempted. Except instead of jumping rope, we're juggling nuclear forces across infinite realities. And if we fail? Carax asked. Then reality gets unmade and restructured according to geometries that would drive most beings insane, Zhang said cheerfully. But hey, no pressure. We've got at least 6 hours before the ancient ones finish converging. 5 hours, 43 minutes, and 12 quantum seconds, Chen corrected. Also, time is becoming increasingly non-linear around the convergence point, so those numbers are more guidelines than actual measurements. Vectora's form rippled with determination. Where do we start? First, Zhang said, pulling up a holographic display that existed in what appeared to be negative dimensions. We need to synchronize the quantum detonation sequences across roughly 10,000 parallel Earths. Then we need to calibrate the crystal matrices to handle quantum energies that technically shouldn't exist. After that, well, we'll probably have to break a few laws of physics. Just a few? Bob asked hopefully. All of them, most likely, Chen admitted. The good news is, once we start, the laws of physics will be more like polite suggestions anyway. And the bad news? Carax inquired. If we succeed, we'll have to fill out the paperwork in every dimension we affect. The bureaucrats are already having fits about the potential overtime. Vectora's form shimmered with what might have been laughter. Of course, humans would be worried about paperwork while preparing to detonate multiple solar systems across parallel dimensions to stop eternal beings from unmaking reality. One question, they asked. Why Earth? Why make your home dimension the battleground? Zhang's quantum states aligned again, but this time her expression was fierce. Because Earth is where we learn to dream. It's where we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. It's where we took our first steps into space, where we learned to bend reality, because we were too impatient to wait for shipping, and where we first realized that the universe was stranger and more wonderful than we could have imagined. She paused. Also, we already had really good insurance policies on the solar system. As alarms began blaring across multiple dimensions, and reality itself began to buckle under the pressure of approaching cosmic horrors, Vectora couldn't help but marvel at humanity's particular brand of insanity. They had turned their entire solar system into a weapon, achieved dimensional transcendence because of shipping costs, and were now preparing to rewrite the laws of physics themselves, all while making sure their insurance premiums were up to date. "Let's get to work," Zhang announced. "We've got reality to save, physics to break, and if we survive, there's an interdimensional pizza party scheduled for next Tuesday, or possibly last Wednesday. Time's funny like that." And as the coalition began their preparations to face down beings older than time itself, Vectora realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, their quantum mastery, or even their weaponized solar systems. It was their ability to face the impossible with a shrug, a bad joke, and a carefully filed insurance claim. The timer began counting down. "Status report!" Admiral Zhang's voice cut through the quantum chaos as reality buckled around them. The Ancestral Memories observation deck had become a whirlwind of multidimensional calculations, with crew members from a dozen species working frantically to coordinate what was either going to be the salvation of existence or its most spectacular farewell party. Crystal matrices are at 97% synchronization across all quantum states, Carax reported, their crystalline form now pulsing with energies that shouldn't exist. "The Ancient Ones they're using variables that don't exist in this universe," Dr. Chen finished, her equation body shifting through impossible patterns. "They're trying to divide by zero. Literally. They're attempting to create a null space that would unravel the fundamental forces holding reality together." "Bold strategy," Bob commented, their mechanical tentacles manipulating quantum strings across several dimensions simultaneously, trying to crash the universe like a badly coded program. Vectora's form had shifted to a color that didn't exist in normal space-time, the crystalline equivalent of a stress headache. "How long until they break through?" "That's the problem," Zhang said grimly. "Time isn't exactly coherent around the breach points anymore. They're attacking through multiple temporal states simultaneously. Could be minutes, could be years, could be last Thursday." "Actually," a new voice chimed in, "it's all of the above, none of the above, and several temporal states that shouldn't exist." A figure that appeared to be made of living clockwork stepped onto the deck. Commander Marcus Rivera of the Temporal Defense Division, humanity's dedicated time cops. "Marcus," Zhang nodded, "I thought you were dealing with that paradox in the Crab Nebula." "I am. Also, I will be. And technically, I never left. Quantum entanglement is weird enough. Try temporal entanglement sometime." Rivera's clockwork form ticked with barely suppressed anxiety. "The Ancient Ones aren't just attacking space. They're attacking time itself. They're attempting to prevent the formation of linear causality." "In English, please," Vectora requested, though they immediately realized the irony of asking for a translation while existing in quantum superposition. "They're trying to stop time from flowing in a straight line," Chen explained. "If they succeed, cause and effect become suggestions rather than laws. Reality would become probabilistic at best, nonsensical at worst." "More nonsensical than now?" Carax asked, gesturing at their surroundings with a crystalline appendage that existed in 8 dimensions simultaneously. "Much worse," Rivera confirmed. "Right now we at least have some rules to break. They want to break the concept of rules itself." Bob's mechanical form shuddered. "That's actually pretty metal. Terrifying, but metal." "Focus, people," Zhang cut in. "The quantum synchronization network? Ready in all dimensions where mathematical constants still work," Carax reported. "We're having some issues in the realities where pi decided to be an even number, but we're compensating. The solar system detonation sequences, primed across all quantum states," Chen confirmed. "Though I should note that some of the parallel Earths are getting creative with their contributions. Earth 157 apparently weaponized their moon using something they call weaponized nostalgia, and Earth 892 has turned Jupiter into what they describe as a quantum jazz bomb." "Do I want to know what a quantum jazz bomb is?" Vectora asked. "It's like regular jazz, but the improvisation rewrites physics instead of just music theory." Zhang pinched the bridge of her nose, a gesture that somehow carried across multiple quantum states. "Of course it does. Status on the Ancient Ones?" Rivera's clockwork form ticked faster. "They've already succeeded in some temporal streams. I've got reports from next week that reality became optional for about 3 picoseconds." The resulting chaos turned all matter in the Andromeda Galaxy into sentient cheese. Fortunately, it was only a local effect, and the cheese was quite reasonable about the whole thing. Right, Zhang said with the calm of someone who had long since accepted that absurdity was just another day at the office. Let's do this before they turn any more galaxies into dairy products. Begin final countdown. Across thousands of parallel dimensions, quantum computers that shouldn't exist began their final calculations. Crystal matrices hummed with energies that defied description. Bob's mechanical tentacles danced through probability spaces, weaving quantum strings into a net that would either save reality or give it the most spectacular send-off in history. T-1 minute, Chen announced. All parallel Earths reporting ready. Even the one where everyone evolved into sentient mathematics. They're actually quite excited about this. Quantum synchronization network is stable, Karax added, though stable is becoming an increasingly abstract concept. Temporal anchor points secured, Rivera reported, though I should warn you that time itself is starting to get opinions about what we're doing. Time can file a complaint with HR after we save it, Zhang said firmly. Final checks, people! Vectora's crystalline form pulsed with a mixture of terror and exhilaration as they monitored the quantum readings. The Ancient Ones were nearly through. Vast, impossible beings that existed in geometries that hurt to think about, pressing against the fabric of reality like cosmic sledgehammers against the walls of creation. 10 seconds, Chen called out. 9, 8. Anyone ever wonder if this is why we couldn't find other advanced civilizations? Bob mused suddenly. Maybe they all blew up their solar systems fighting cosmic horrors. 7, 6, 5. Not the time, Bob, Zhang said through gritted teeth. 4, 3, 2. Vectora's form vibrated with anticipation. Across countless dimensions, humanity's greatest weapon, an entire solar system transformed into a reality-breaking bomb through the power of quantum mechanics, crystal technology, and what Rivera had termed weaponized human stubbornness, stood ready. 1, for Earth, Zhang said quietly. For reality. For reasonable shipping costs. 0! The universe held its breath, and then everything happened at once. Reality itself screamed as thousands of solar systems detonated simultaneously across multiple quantum states. The laws of physics threw up their hands and went on strike. Time tied itself in knots trying to process events that were happening in every moment at once. The Ancient Ones, vast and terrible and older than existence itself, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. Humanity's particular brand of creative problem-solving, multiplied across infinite dimensions and accelerated by 500,000 years of development. The result was spectacular. The first thing Vectora noticed when their consciousness reasserted itself was that existence still existed, which, given what they'd just attempted, was either a very good sign or a very bad one. Status report! Zhang's voice came through the quantum static, sounding simultaneously exhausted and triumphant. Did we just save reality or make it someone else's problem? Define save. Chen's mathematical form flickered back into view, looking somewhat disheveled, if pure equations could be disheveled. Because according to my readings, we technically destroyed reality about 17 times in the past 3 seconds. But we also created it 23 times, so I think we're running a net positive. Small victories, Bob chimed in, their mechanical tentacles reassembling from what appeared to be quantum confetti. Although I think we may have accidentally invented some new colors, and possibly some new numbers. Karax's crystalline structure slowly reintegrated from what looked like a cloud of quantum possibilities. Quantum synchronization network is, well, stable, might be optimistic, but it's definitely enthusiastic. Several parallel Earths are reporting successful detonations, though Earth 157's weaponized nostalgia had some interesting side effects. Define interesting, Vectora asked, dreading the answer. The 1990s are now a quantum state instead of a decade, Rivera explained, his clockwork form ticking in patterns that suggested time itself was still sorting out what had just happened. Also, somewhere in the multiverse, grunge music has achieved sentience and is demanding representation in the coalition. Zhang pinched the bridge of her nose again, a gesture that had somehow become quantumly entangled with the concept of exasperation itself. And the Ancient Ones? That's complicated, Chen said, her equation body running calculations that seemed to hurt reality's feelings. We didn't exactly destroy them. You can't really destroy something that predates existence. But we did give them a rather severe metaphysical headache. Current readings suggest they've been redistributed. Redistributed? Vectora's form shifted through several impossible colors. Remember how we turned our solar system into a quantum bomb? Chen asked. Well, it turns out that when you detonate multiple versions of reality simultaneously, you don't just create an explosion. You create new mathematical principles. We essentially forced the ancient ones to comply with quantum bureaucracy. What? Carax's crystalline structure vibrated with confusion. We weaponized paperwork, Zhang explained with a grin that somehow existed in every quantum state simultaneously. Turns out even beings older than time itself can't handle interdimensional regulatory compliance. They're currently filing appeals with the quantum physics department of every universe they tried to unmake. Bob's mechanical form shuddered with what might have been laughter. You turned cosmic horror into red tape? That's the most human solution I've ever heard. We prefer to think of it as administrative peacekeeping, Rivera said, his clockwork form finally settling into a more stable temporal pattern. The ancient ones wanted to unmake reality? Fine. But first, they have to file the proper forms, in triplicate, across all dimensions, and get approval from every version of Earth they tried to destroy. That's... Vectora's form pulsed with realization. That's brilliant, and terrible, and brilliantly terrible. Thank you, Zhang said modestly. We learned from the best, our own bureaucrats. Turns out 500,000 years of interdimensional governance teaches you a thing or two about weaponizing administrative procedures. But what happens now? Carax asked. We've still got several thousand parallel Earths running hot with quantum energies, a grunge movement demanding sovereign quantum state status, and I'm pretty sure we accidentally invented at least 3 new forms of mathematics. Now? Zhang's expression turned serious. Now we rebuild. We strengthen the quantum synchronization network. We prepare for the next crisis. And most importantly, she paused for dramatic effect. We file our after-action reports. A collective groan echoed across multiple dimensions. Oh, don't be like that, Chen chided, her equation body somehow managing to look smug. We just saved reality through the power of bureaucracy. The least we can do is document it properly. Besides, Rivera added, some of those new mathematics we invented might actually make the paperwork easier, though I should warn you that quantum form 27b6 now requires solutions in imaginary time. Could be worse, Bob pointed out. Remember the Great Pineapple Incident? That paperwork had to be filed in flavors instead of numbers. Vectora's form shifted to what might have been resignation. You know, when I first learned that humanity had achieved dimensional transcendence because of shipping costs, I thought that was as strange as things could get. Oh, my sweet summer photon, Zhang laughed. That wasn't even the weirdest thing we did that century. Wait until you hear about how we accidentally turned the speed of light into a subscription service. As the Coalition began the monumental task of reorganizing reality, now with extra dimensions and some very confused fundamental forces, Vectora couldn't help but marvel at humanity's unique approach to cosmic problems. They had faced down beings older than time itself, and won not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through their mastery of the most terrifying force in any universe, bureaucratic procedure. By the way, Chen added casually, we should probably address the fact that we've accidentally created a quantum help desk. Apparently, all those new mathematical principles we invented need technical support. A help desk? Carax asked. For reality? Have you tried turning the universe off and on again? Bob suggested helpfully. Zhang sighed, a sound that somehow carried the weight of 500,000 years of dealing with cosmic absurdity. Add it to the agenda. Right after we figure out what to do about the sentient grunge movement and before we address the fact that Tuesday has apparently become recursive. And somewhere, in the quantum spaces between spaces, the Ancient Ones faced their greatest challenge yet. Filling out paperwork in dimensions they had tried to destroy, using numbers that hadn't existed until humanity invented them out of spite and necessity. The universe, it seemed, was safe, at least until the next